Now, I would really love to take this opportunity to introduce you to someone who has really helped me on my journey, someone that I've had the privilege of watching for over 6 years share his story. I am proud to welcome Joseph Ginger from the New Chandleth First Nation.
How does this get activated? It's on? Okay. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here this morning to hear our story. It's a story other people would not like to hear. My Christian name is Joseph Michael Ginger. My Hotwish name, given to me by my grandma, is Sri Krishna, lightning snake. And another name I got from the residential school system, 110, 152, I was known as Number for 12 years. I spent 12 years in Canada's Indian residential school system. The first 8 years were spent in Christie Indian Residential School on Vancouver Island. Most of the Vancouver Island First Nation kids went to Christie for 8 years. I entered Christie at the age of 6, going on 7. I was there for 8 years. That's where my life changed, from living in a loving environment at home with my mom and dad, grandparents, changed radically. Christie was heavy into discipline. They cracked down on us if we practiced any of our culture, our language. We were beaten for speaking our language. Violence was the prevailing attitude given to us by the supervisors and the teachers, priests and nuns, brothers of the Roman Catholic Church. They disciplined us harshly. The beginning of my residential school in Christie was a rude introduction to the food of today. They served us green bologna, green hot dogs. That was a pretty regular diet. Christie had no refrigeration, didn't have much in the way of heating. Once in a while you get a hot bath. Your best friends were hunger and loneliness. You were like that all the time. You were always hungry. We stole from the kitchen porch, carrots, turnips, just to feed ourselves. And then when you were caught, you were beat. But when you're hungry, you don't stop. There's a lot of violence I'm familiar with from my first 8 years. They were pretty good, pretty handy with a strap if you got out of line. or it was perceived you got out of the line, you were administered a good strap immediately, and you lost what little privileges you had. Went on and on. I remember being in the first grade, seeing my cousin. I don't know what he did, but they all let us in the dining room. We're all kids. And whatever he did, he paid dearly for that day in front of a bunch of children witnesses. They bent him over a chair, took the strap to him in the dining room. You just hear him screaming. This one scene I never forget. Sometimes I wake up. So, I don't know what he did, but it wasn't worth the beating he got. Other instances, common. I remember my cousin, one time he brought of ketchup to Christie. The supervisor caught him, a brother. He asked him, "Who do you think are you, an individual?" And then he took a sugar shaker and smacked it up top of his head, broke it. It was pretty common. I spent 8 years in Christie, got used to the treatment, poor food. The kids in my school didn't have a weight problem. They had a hunger problem. After Christie, I went to a mission Indian residential school for 4 years. At the time, it seemed like a long way from my homeland, my home country. In the end, I spent more time in Stolo country than my own country, my own people. I never did go back home after that. Mission was interesting. Needless to say, I hated it. It was bigger. I had to adapt. Things were a little better there. The food was better. We had hot water. We had heating, unlike Christie. The system of education was pretty well the same. We were isolated from the local community till my 11th grade, and then they bused us down to Mission Senior Secondary in the 11th grade. That was a difficult transition for all of us, I believe. The first year, they let us up in these paddy wagons and dumped us off at the high school. I really had a problem with that. Needless to say, I lost my interest in the education system. It was something I didn't want to be part of anymore. I became a loner, quiet, full of anger. I always had an anger management thing. I was explosive. Those are the kind of characteristics you come out of a residential school system with. You have to learn to protect yourself if you're going to survive. It was just like a kid's prison. It wasn't a school. The kids that I graduated with from Mission, I'm pretty sure their feeling about it was the same as mine. Like I said, after spending 10 years totally isolated and then entering a public school system, I was like an animal. This was like freedom. But still, I was always cautious. And I never wanted to adjust my attitude for fear of violence, because when you're in that mode, say in Christie, that's the way of life. You get into a fight every day. You get tired of fighting. I always had a black eye, bruised ribs, sore ear. Medical system treatment in res school was non-existent. All the years I spent in Christie, I might have got a couple of aspirin from the nun. That was about it. So you just pray you didn't get sick. If you got sick, you just got sent to your door, stay in bed. Hopefully you had a brother that would bring you food, bring you sustenance. So they forgot about you. You went up there, it's like you were non-existent, like they wanted to get rid of you. That was a way of life. Kind of eats you up as a child. So you bring a lot of that anger into your adult life. Took me a long time to seek therapy, a long time to unclench my fists, a long time to remain calm and not feel like I'm under a threat of attack. Needless to say, to this day, I have anxiety for a lot of things. But you live under a system like that, you're not going to walk away calm, cool, or collected. You're going to walk away with a lot of wounds, emotionally, physically. You take the beatings, the hunger, the predators. We had predators in Christie that showed up in Mission after a few years. You thought you were going to get away from them. When you got there, guess who was there? They used the residential school system as their hunting ground. They abused us sexually, physically, emotionally, mentally. By the time you got out of that, you were dragging. Some days you didn't want to live. You were depressed and lonely. I speak to some of those survivors today, and I talk to them. A lot of them have not had any therapy. They're talking about residential school system, but they don't remember what they ate. They don't remember a lot of things about it because they blocked it out. They forgot. They remember some stories, but not the ones that, I guess, branded them negatively. In mission, the transition for me was coming from a small residential school system to a larger one. I made a lot of residential school brothers and sisters in mission. They were my family. I didn't see my family sometime for 10 months. Some of my friends didn't even get to go home. They were there for a year. By the time I got on a mission, I was like at a racehorse track at the starting gate. And when they let me out, I just split down the road, pursue my addictions, pursue my hate. I didn't come out there very positive. I hated everything about myself. I had the culture beat out of me. My family, I wasn't close to. Like, I was closer to my brothers and sisters in the residential school system. A lot of our cousins went to Kamloops Indian Residential School. I had two older brothers that went there. I remember asking them about the residential school system, and they never wanted to talk about it. You know, they just kind of looked at me. You know, I'd say, "Did they got a store?" And they say, "Oh, yeah." And that's about it. They never gave me much information. I was, you know, you get that feeling as a child that there's something wrong. When I went there, I knew what. You know, I remember when I was a kid on the reservation, all the older kids were gone. They were in res school all year. Our reservation was pretty lonely. We were just us youngsters, underage, 5 and under. Some of the kids went to a res school at age 5. I was 6, go on 7. I was lucky. Those days were long and lonely. Once in a while, you'd get to talk to your mom or your grandma. Not very often. But you tried to put that away. You tried to forget because you were in residential school and you had to survive and concentrate on being there. And that was the way of life for all of us. Nobody was treated any differently. We're all painted by the same brush. We all walked around a little depressed, a little defeated, ashamed of our color, ashamed of our language. That's what they did to us. I entered Christie. I spoke 2 dialects, my people's language and English. I remember they said you had to take French, their second language. And I remember being ashamed they didn't consider our mother language as a language. They were here to civilize us. Yeah, they did a pretty good job of that. So, anyway, there isn't much I can brag about my education in the residential school system, other than the fact I'm a survivor, and I have some good brothers and sisters from the residential school system. That's the only thing I walked away with. So, again, I'd like to thank you for being here and hearing part of my story. It's a difficult day for me. Thank you for being here and hearing our story. Like I said, a lot of people don't want to hear it, but that was the system we grew up under. Hopefully, things are changing for the positive. So, I feel good about the young people today. They look happy, healthy, educated. I didn't see that where I came from. But I just got to say, I have to be positive and keep accepting things as changing. And I appreciate that. Being here and telling my story is one of those things, positive things. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Sorry, my hands are cold.
All right. Well, I got it.
A little wobbly.
Yeah, I got it.
That's weird.
All right. Hey, wow.
Okay, thank you. ACM. Respected elders, chiefs and council, members of the education system of Abbotsford, I'm honored to be here to give you a few words of my experience and Mission City Indian Residential School that I attended for 12 years. My name is Cyril Xavier Pierre. My traditional name is Teuton, killer of food for my people. I'm from the Katzie First Nation in Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge. I live on Barnston Island, which is right underneath the Golden Ears Bridge. I'm 75 years old. I'm very, very nervous right now. But I have to do my best to try and educate the educators about my experience of what I lived through. I want to begin with when the day I was born in my family's old house on Barnston Island. My sisters had told me this story when I was first born. My father had picked me up from where my mom was, and he packed me out into our kitchen where all of my family was standing waiting around the table. And he said as he was packing me out, showing me to my brothers and my sisters in the kitchen room, he said I was in his arms, and he was showing my sisters, here's your brother. They said the very first thing that they seen me do when I opened my eyes for the first time of my life, they said I had opened my eyes and I looked and I smiled at all of my sisters and my brothers for the first time in my life. That was the beginning of beauty. They were telling me, and I remember now that that was the beginning of the love that I was gonna receive from my family. And right from that day on, until I was 6, 7 years old, when I first got taken away to residential school, I treasure those moments, that a little bit that I learned from my dad, my big brothers, the cleanliness, the love, the caring that I got from my mom and my sisters every single day from them few moments for 6 years. I treasure those moments for the rest of my life. That is the only love that I can remember from my family, my brothers, my sisters, my mom and dad. And then I was taken off to residential school in Mission City. Right there, the axe had dropped and separated my love life with my family, my brothers and sisters. When I got to that school, the door had opened. The recreation room was about the half the size of this this floor here, and all around in that building, in that room, was the boys, the junior boys. In the center of that room, there was a man, an oblate brother, they call him. And there was a child, probably 6 or 7 years old, standing there, naked. That man, a grown, full man, was holding something like this, the strap. He was torturing that child, and every one of us were watching him, hitting that child over and over and over. We found out later the reason why he was being hit is because he was speaking his native language from where he came from. That's one of the instances. We lived on the end of this strap daily. Daily, I'm not kidding you. Every single day, right from the moment you woke up in the morning until you went back to lay in that bed to rest. Many, many times I wondered what the hell happened to all of the love that I was getting from my family. It was now destroyed and gone forever. I'm going to give you a couple of other instances of torture that I lived through as a little boy. One was when I was sitting at the breakfast table and I was having my piece of bread. You got one slice of bread, and in the middle of it you had a little clump of strawberry jam. That was one of the better foods that we eat. Many times the meat that we had was green. The bologna, the wieners, the milk, you could see through it in a glass. While I was eating away my bread and my strawberry jam, I was munching away, then somebody came and tapped me on the shoulder. I turned and I looked, and he says, "It's your turn, come and follow me." He took me up the stairs to the top floor, put me on a chair. I didn't know what was happening. Then he started to dig around in my mouth. And in between my two front teeth on the front, there was a little clump of strawberry jam. And he had this needle thing, and he was digging around in there, and he says, "You have a cavity." I didn't know what that was. And then he grabbed the needle, and then he just shoved it into my mouth and rammed it right into my bone. I didn't know what that was. And then he grabbed the drill. My face wasn't even frozen yet. And he started to drill and drill and drill. I couldn't believe what I was going through, the torture and the pain. And then finally that drill went through my tooth and right into my root. And it was just like a lightning went off in my head. Total shock, and I just screamed and I screamed. The pain that was going through my head over that was just unbearable. He said that he had put a filling in there. There was nothing wrong with my tooth till he hit the nerve with that drill. That will be in my head until the day I die and get planted into Mother Earth. One instance of horror that is still here and here, the suffering and pain. Another instance is we had to come down 3 flights of stairs to go down into a basement. We called it the dungeon, where there was 4 or 5 showers in there. You'd have to step down and go down into the shower. And before you get into the shower, there was a little trough, and it had about 6 inches of white solution in there. You had to step into that trough, clean your feet off, and then get into the shower. Well, I went through that, scrubbing myself off. Some kids got into that trough, and they had athlete's foot. That was the remedy to cure. Athlete's foot was just rampant in our dormitory. Well, anyhow, I was in the shower and I was scrubbing myself off, and I noticed coming down the stairs there was a nun, a sister, and she was coming down, and as the boys were getting out, they had to be inspected. Your neck, your ears, the back, checked your hair. Well, it was my turn to get out. I got out of the shower, and then she started to pull my ears and my hair, checking my neck, and she said, "You're nothing but a dirty little Indian." And she grabbed a piece of soap and a little bristle brush. She rubbed it on the soap, and she started scrubbing and scrubbing my neck. And I was just in pain again, and "You're nothing but a dirty little Indian, and you're going to amount to nothing." She just shoved me back into the shower and told me to wash off. So I washed off and I got out, got my towel, dried myself up, and then I started to go up the stairs to go back, walk up to my bed in the dormitory. As I was going up the stairs, I thought my neck was still wet, and I rubbed my hand on my neck and I looked at it. My hand was full of blood from when she was scrubbing my neck. I made it back to my dormitory bed. What happened to all the love and caring that my sisters were doing, keeping me clean and healthy and loved every day, was gone again. Well, the other instance would be the brother, the oblate of the Roman Catholic system. He would come around the dormitory, go up and down the aisles of beds, carrying this in one hand and a bell in the other. And he was going along, ringing the bell and swinging. He knew exactly where the people slept and the ones that wet the bed. They would have to stand at the end of their bed and get this 25 times every single morning. The screaming of torture on children was horrifying. That never ever goes away. And then the one time the same guy was coming down our aisle, and the boy that slept beside me, he knew he was going to get the strap, and the guy was coming and getting closer to our beds. And the boy looked over to me and he said, "I need to go to the bathroom." So he turned and he walked down the end of the dormitory to where the bathroom was, and I stepped over to his bed. And I said, "I'm sick and tired of watching that child get the strap every day." So I stood on the end of his bed and I took his 25 shots on the hands. The guy went by. I moved back to my bed, bawling my brains out. And the boy came back, walked past me, and he said, "Thank you." And I was still crying my head off. The most awful stories that never ever leave my mind, ever. I gotta pack these things to my grave. No, I'm limited with time here. I don't even know. I'm supposed to be watching the clock here, but I wanted to get into some of the things that happened at that old school, we call it Old St. Mary's in Mission, that's now called Heritage Park. I lived there for 6 years. The horrifying discipline that we suffered as children, right from grade 1 to grade 6. And then in 1961, they built a new school up the highway about a half a mile. And we thought, they told us we were moving there in 1961. And we figured, yes, life is going to get better. Not so. When we got to that school, the clothes was better, the food was much better, but the nightmares became worse. Within that system, it became a nest of pedophiles and predators on boys and girls. There were 6 principals there that I remember. 5 of them were pedophiles on girls, raping young ladies, sexually abusing the boys. That horrifying story still is stuck in my heart. I was sexually abused for years there. Mission Indian Residential School, that one was called. Never ever goes away. And then in the last 2 years, I ended up in Mission Senior Secondary. I graduated in 1967. And then as soon as I graduated, many of us just opened the doors, we took off, went home, never even said goodbye to each other. We all became alcoholics and drug addicts for years and years. After a few years, one of my friends phoned and told me that he wanted me to be a witness for him to go to court. And I said, "What the heck did you do?" He says, "Oh, I did nothing. I'm just bringing this guy to court because he had sexually abused me." And he was telling me his story. on the process that he had to go through. So I said, okay, but I don't want to be your witness. The very man that he was talking about was the very pedophile that had sexually abused me for years. Towards the end, we had 28 victims in the courts charging the same man for sexual abuse for 7 years. That man went to court, and I read my impact statement referring to the 28 boys that were behind me. During that reading of my impact, the whole place in that courtroom was crying their head off after I finished my impact statement. And this guy, the pedophile, got up and read his impact statement. And he said it wasn't 28 boys, it was 40 guys. And then after his statement, the judge read the sentence to him. For the 40 victims that he had, including our group, he got 3 years in jail. Served 1, and then they let him go. We asked, what the hell happened? Why did he only get 3 years for the 40 victims he had? They said because of his age, they were going to let him go. And we all thought, well, there was no consideration for us when we were children. We were sentenced to life, what he did to us. Horrifying situations. And now, at the old school at Heritage Park, I'm a piece of the GPR team, they call it, and ground penetrating radar. We're searching for all the bodies. I call them the baby ancestors of Indian Residential School of Mission City. I'm part of that group, and I'm proud to be part of it. And we are working towards a commemoration day in 2023, and we're working towards a sacred ceremony day for the baby ancestors to be lifted out of the ground and set their spirits free to go into eternity where they rightfully belong. Many public people walk through the Heritage Park, and they can hear babies crying under the bush in the ground, especially the animals that walk with their owners. And they're kind of puzzled why these kids are crying in the ground. We know, because we lived there, that's where we lost our childhood, and it's still there spiritually. And many of those victims that are buried there, their spirits have never separated and gone back into the cycle of spiritual life. So we're currently working on that, but I wanted to mention that within reconciliation, the principals, the teachers, the whole district of Abbotsford is a role model to the youth in reconciliation. When our babies go to these public schools, the color of hair doesn't matter to them. The color of eyes doesn't matter to them. They're just babies. They can have any friend of the 7 continents of this world. the color of eyes, the color of hair, the color of skin, the languages they speak, the cultures they have in the 7 continents of this world. There's 7 ancestral teachings that come from those 7 continents, and they are now walking in your people's hallways in all of the education systems across Canada. That is beautiful. Treasure that. You're a part of those kids traveling, preparing them for their careers and for their future. That is fabulous. Keep up the great work on that. We as elders treasure that, because where we came from in residential school, there's a line. We are the warriors of the people that were buried illegally into the ground. We are the warriors fighting the battle still to try and find them justice, to get released from the ground spiritually and set free to go into eternity. We are doing that with amazing grace, fighting the best we can. Take care of these kids. They're babies. They're part of your life. They are role models like you are. All the continents of the world, these children have in the palm of their hands, and they love it. They're friends with any one of them. Keep up the fabulous work. We as elders love what you're doing, especially because those babies that were illegally buried in these grounds are going to be the guardian angels of all the little ones that are fighting for the future that they should have had if they lived to be. And now, I'm going to be doing a song that I've been practicing for a few years, and it has to do with the baby ancestors, I call them. It says in that song that we once were lost, but now we are found. And just studying and working with the ground penetrating crew, I've only done this song maybe 4 times, 5 times in the last month. I did it for my sister that just passed away maybe 2 weeks ago, and a nephew, and a grandnephew that was just found down at the river here. He finally came home to go back to his mom and dad. And I dedicate this song to those people, especially the baby ancestors, I call it. And it's called Amazing Grace. So I'll do that for you now, and hold on. This is why we're here, to learn and work things together, to set things free with love and honor and respect. The universe belongs to the stars, yeah. The universe belongs to the angels. Oh, yeah. Now the universe belongs to the baby ancestor spirits of Mission City Indian Residential School. Sim, ho, hi, Sim. Thank you, Sim, for hearing my voice. I'd like to ask the three crows my sweetheart Alicia, she's like a daughter to me. Joe, my brother, partner in residential school, and Dallas, he's like another son to me. We are the Three Crows, and we want to say thank you for hearing our voice today. We hope we have taught you a little bit more about the residential school issue. Hey, CM. Hey, Scott. We raise our hands, say thank you.
On behalf of our entire district, I want to thank Dallas and Alicia and Elders Joe and Cyril for your stories. An aspect of truth and reconciliation is truth-telling. And I can't thank you enough for your stories. One of my favorite authors is Thomas King. And he says that the truth about stories is that that's all that we are. I want to thank you for the gift that you gave us today. We should take a break. We have about 20 minutes for 3,000 people to get a cookie. There is cookies and there's coffee all throughout the building, and it's your job to find it. We are coming back very shortly. We're taking 20 minutes for a break so that we can continue our day. So please do enjoy a short break, and we'll be back to continue our program.